Russia has, the Russian bear has made a land grab for Georgia, Crimea, now is surrounding the Ukraine. What's that?
He hasn't gotten there yet.
Russia has become the world's leading aggressor. Is that right or not? Who does Ezekiel say is going to lead the charge into Israel? Gog, the leader of Rosh, is going to lead Magog. I've mentioned this before to you. He has made a remarkable turnaround in Russia's fortunes, and especially as it relates to the Middle East. Think of this, what he's done just in the last year. He rolled the welcome mat out to Snowden, a betrayer. He single-handedly solved, quote unquote, serious chemical weapon issues. He single-handedly relieved Iran from the sanctions, has made a deal with Palestine in the middle of the negotiations of the U.S. and Palestine and Israel. He's now taking Crimea and is about to take the Ukraine. And the only thing that you can basically say is that Putin is a very, very, very greedy person. Yeah, if you look at it a little bit, he came into Soviet Russia at a time when they were very depleted, and he started to make deals. At a time when they lacked leadership and lacked direction, 15 years ago, he came into power and realized that it was like a mobster. He had inherited a whole nation. Early on, he opted for a 37% stake in Surgutnik gas. Now, they make $20 billion a year. Now, if you own 37% of a company making $27 billion, $20 billion a year, you're doing pretty good. He has a stake in an oil trader company. And his biggest stake is in the Russian state-owned gas company called Gazprom, where he has a 5% stake. When Putin goes to India and makes a gas deal, and Egypt, and Palestine, and Turkey, and Europe, he's making himself money. Do the math. Somebody that owns 5% of a $150 billion a year corporation. How many of you make that? How many of you make that kind of money? He somehow managed to own a $40 million yacht, yet the Kremlin pays him $187,000 a year. So he reports on his money that he's gotten. You can look it up to 187,000 rubles or dollars or whatever. He's got 20 mansions, 15 presidential helicopters, 40 private jets, and that's the star in his ownership portfolio, a $1 billion palace. Very greedy, very money hungry. And let me explain to you. Russia is not doing very good economically. The ruble isn't worth diddly squat. Their equipment isn't the best. They've got one thing going for them. They struck gas in Siberia and sell 50% of Europe their gas. And 70% of that gas goes through the Ukraine and passes through the Ukraine to Europe. And they're hanging on to that for all their work. The financial future of Russia depends on the expansion of their gas markets. It provides upwards to, some say 60%, some say 80% of Russia's budget is on gas sales. So they started moving into the Middle East. In October, all of a sudden, you look up and they got a $4.3 billion deal with Iraq. January of this year, they provided the arms to Syria. $3 billion arms deal to Egypt. Russia was dormant 5-10 years ago. They weren't in existence. All of a sudden, they're controlling everything in the Middle East and making deals all up and down with Israel's enemies. I told you, Ezekiel's prophecy says Russia, Iran. And they've never partnered once in 2,500 years. But all of a sudden, Russia just sold Iran missiles. And just this year, as soon as those sanctions were lifted, they made a deal where Iran is going to provide 500,000 barrels of Iranian oil a day to Russia. 12%. Iran's the second largest producer of oil in the world, and 12% of all their oil every day is going to free to Russia. And for that, Russia's going to come in and build 2 to 4 new nuclear reactors. So Russia is positioning themselves with all of Israel's enemies by giving them military equipment, by making deals with them, and he's stuffing money in his pockets faster than you and I. Reuters, Forbes magazine ranks him as the wealthiest person in the world. You look it up. Some of the statistics are hard to get. It's not like they, fill them out correctly, right? E in your notes. Russia's quest for gas supremacy is led by Gazprom. Now here's a map of Gazprom's pipelines through Europe. Do you think it's important to Russia to sell gas to Europe? From looking at that map. And furthermore, there's the bottleneck through the Ukraine. Here's little Crimea down here, down at the bottom, that's now Russia's. So what's this Crimea Ukraine deal all about over there? What's it about? Yes. Russia is securing its financial future. A couple winters ago, Ukraine didn't pay their bill on time. Poor Europe. The gas goes through the Ukraine. You pay your bill. Ukraine says, I haven't got no money. You better pay your bill. What's Russia do? Belarus, Poland, almost froze to death that winter. You look it up. Europe is petrified. And what else does this do, folks? it doesn't allow Europe to complain about Russia at anything. Europe is strapped. They can't complain. I don't care what Russia does. Europe's not going to do a whole lot about it, right? Unless they want to freeze some more. And so Russia's out there trying to secure their future. And that's what that's all about. It is stated that Gazprom has so much natural gas under the tundra in Siberia that its resources are equivalent to all the gas and all the oil fields owned by all the Western companies in the world put together. And so what's beginning to happen is there's sort of a little bit of a gas bonanza in the Mediterranean. And so Russia wants Syria because it's on the Mediterranean above Israel, and they want to go out into the Mediterranean and work with Syria to discover more gas in the Mediterranean. And so they signed a 25-year energy deal with Syria, giving them the rights to extend out in the Mediterranean 45 miles. Then he comes down to the Palestinians, and if you know where Gaza is, it's on the coast of Israel. Does everybody know that Gaza is on the coast of Israel? Well, that coastline, by international law, goes out in the Mediterranean Sea. 45 miles. And Russia comes down during our peace talks and makes $1 billion deal with the Palestinian leader Abbas for the exploration of the gas in Gaza's right of way. So he's got Gaza's right of way, and just above Israel, he's got Syria's right of way. Israel's now in between the Gaza right of way, the Syria right of way, and Russia's positioned themselves at both spots to discover natural gas. In your notes, Israel in the end times. My question is, does Genesis predict an end times oil and gas discovery for Israel? You know, for years, how many of you remember this? If you're a Bible prophecy student, for years, you heard people say one day Israel will get gas and oil. Yeah, anybody ever hear that? For years, people said that. Back when I was alive in World War I, they were saying that. Are there prophecies in the Bible that indicate that Israel will get gas and oil? That's the question. Well, in the book of Genesis, Jacob sat down and gave his blessings to the 12 tribes. Do you all remember that? Are you all with me? And then later Moses, before they went into the promised land and before he died, said, gather the tribes, I want to give them a blessing. Is it possible that in the land, the blessings to the tribes 3,000 years ago, that there are hidden clues to the discovery of gas for Israel, in Israel? Wouldn't that be neat? Well, in your notes, let's just look at it briefly. Prophecy in Israel's last day, Genesis chapter 49. Number 1, Jacob's final blessing to his sons. Genesis 49 and verse 2. Let's kind of look at these 5 verses together here real quick. Let's look at what it says. Then Jacob called together all of his sons and said, gather around me, and I will tell you what will happen to each of you in the what? Yeah, so he's not talking about what's going to happen back then. All right, to Joseph he says, by the God of your father, who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you, with blessings of heaven above and blessings of the deep that lies beneath. Number 3, Moses begins